In the roaring 1920s, when jazz echoed from speakeasies and Prohibition turned America dry, one man flooded the streets of Chicago with illegal booze, bullets, and blood. He was flashy, he was ruthless, he was a legend. This is the story of Alphonse Gabriel Capone, the man who ruled organized crime with an iron fist and a devilish grin. From a streetwise kid in Brooklyn to the king of Chicago's underworld, and finally, to a lonely, broken man haunted by his sins. This isn't just a gangster story, this is America's gangster story. Al Capone was born in Brooklyn, New York on January 17, 1899, to Italian immigrant parents from Naples. His father, Gabriele, was a barber. His mother, Teresa, a seamstress. They wanted the American dream. Al, he had bigger dreams. Grittier ones. He dropped out of school at just 14 years old after hitting a teacher. That should have been the first red flag. From there he bounced around local gangs. First the Junior 40 Thieves, then the 5 Points Gang, under the wing of the infamous gangster Johnny Torrio. Capone wasn't just muscle, he had a head for business and a knack for violence. He worked as a bouncer at a Coney Island bar called the Harvard Inn, where he earned the nickname Scarface after insulting a woman and getting slashed across the face by her brother. By 1919, Torrio had moved to Chicago, and Capone followed. There, a bootlegging empire was waiting to be built. Chicago in the 1920s was a city on fire. Prohibition had banned alcohol nationwide, but people still wanted to drink. Enter Capone, who saw Prohibition not as a restriction, but as a gold mine. Working with Torrio, Capone helped build an empire of speakeasies, breweries, and bribes. When Torrio was gunned down in 1925 and decided to retire to Italy, he left the whole operation in Capone's hands. At just 26 years old, Capone was a millionaire and the de facto ruler of Chicago's South Side. He was making an estimated $100 million a year, mostly from bootlegging, gambling, and prostitution. He dressed in silk suits, rode in bulletproof Cadillacs, and was always surrounded by heavily armed bodyguards. He loved the limelight. Capone donated to charities, opened soup kitchens during the Great Depression, and even got cheered at sports games. The press called him public enemy number one, and honestly he loved it. But behind the charm was pure terror. Capone didn't rise to the top by playing nice. He ruled with fear, and when fear wasn't enough, he used firepower. His war with rival gangster George "Bugs" Moran, who controlled Chicago's North Side, became legendary. The battles were brutal: drive-by shootings, bombings, assassinations in broad daylight. But nothing was more infamous than the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, February 14, 1929. Capone's men, dressed as police officers, lined up 7 of Moran's men in a garage on North Clark Street and gunned them down with Tommy guns. Over 70 rounds fired, no survivors. Capone was conveniently in Miami at the time, giving himself an alibi. But really, everyone knew who ordered the hit. The massacre shocked America. It was the moment the public realized Capone wasn't just a flashy outlaw, he was a cold-blooded killer. The heat was turning up. For years, Capone seemed untouchable. He had judges, cops, and politicians in his pocket. Even Elliot Ness, the Prohibition agent leading the Untouchables, couldn't get close enough to stick serious charges on him. But Capone had one blind spot: money. While murders couldn't be pinned on him, tax evasion could. In 1931, after a years-long investigation, the federal government charged Capone with 22 counts of income tax evasion. Not bootlegging, not murder, taxes. During the trial, Capone tried to bribe jurors. The judge swapped the jury at the last minute. The verdict? Guilty on 5 counts. Capone was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, fined $50,000, and ordered to pay $215,000 in back taxes. He was sent to Atlanta U.S. Penitentiary and later transferred to the infamous Alcatraz, where his power meant nothing. Alcatraz stripped Capone of his empire and his ego. He couldn't buy his way out, couldn't bribe guards, couldn't escape the cold, hard truth. He was no longer the king. But his real enemy wasn't prison, it was disease. Capone had contracted syphilis in his younger days, and by the time he was in prison, it had progressed to neurosyphilis, a severe form that attacks the brain. He became confused, paranoid, sometimes childlike. By the time he was released from prison in 1939, after serving just over 7 years, he was a shadow of his former self. He retired to his mansion in Palm Island, Florida, living out his final years in seclusion, fishing from his dock and talking to people who weren't there. On January 25, 1947, Al Capone died of a stroke and pneumonia, his brain so damaged by syphilis that doctors said he had the mental capacity of a 12-year-old. Al Capone was dead, but his legend, still very much alive. To some, Capone is a folk hero, a rebel who outwitted a broken system. To others, he was a heartless killer responsible for hundreds of deaths and decades of violence. What's undeniable is the impact he left behind. His empire helped shape the modern FBI. His downfall gave birth to better tax enforcement laws. And his story, equal parts tragedy, crime, and charisma, has inspired books, movies, and TV shows for generations. Capone once said, "You can get much farther with a kind word and a gun than you can with a kind word alone." That might have worked for a time, but in the end, the gun ran out of bullets, the empire crumbled, and Al Capone died not with a bang, but a whisper. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into the world of Al Capone, hit that like button, subscribe for more real crime history, and drop a comment. Who should we cover next? Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and remember, crime never pays, at least not forever.